Good morning, everybody. Today we'll be talking about quantitative methods to evaluate risk. My name is Declan Boyle. I graduated from Virginia Tech last spring with an undergraduate degree in political science and an integrated security minor. After graduation, I plan to work in the DC metropolitan area working in public sector IT sales.
My name is Clay Eckert, and I graduated in the fall of 2022 from the University of Kansas with an undergraduate degree in marketing. Post-graduation, I plan on going to law school with the ultimate goal of becoming a pro sports agent.
My name is Nick Visciso. I did my undergraduate degree at Virginia Tech in spring 2023 in cybersecurity. And post-graduation, my plans are to work in the Northern Virginia, DC area, focusing in cybersecurity consulting and data analytics.
We're here today on behalf of our capstone sponsor, Mr. Scott Lucero from the Acquisition Innovation Research Center, and would like to thank him as well as our faculty advisor, Mr. John Garrity from Virginia Tech's Industrial and Systems Engineering Department for all of their advice, guidance, and insight along this process. Now over to Clay to give us some more context.
Thanks, Declan. So our capstone sponsor was the Acquisition Innovation Research Center, which is a company that was established in September of 2020 by the Department of Defense with the initiative to integrate innovation and alternative disciplines from the universities that it works with. It has already partnered with over 22 universities and almost 800 HBCU and minority institutions, and is a multidisciplinary company working with a wide array of professional fields. A little bit more context of our project. The United States hasn't engaged in major naval fleet combat since World War II, and therefore it's difficult to recognize our ability to maintain operational superiority against developed enemy. Similarly, a rising conflict between the United States and top naval forces such as Russia and China, in addition to development in drone technology, it's become evident that we must recognize our own naval capabilities in areas in need of improvement. Lastly, alongside the Acquisition Innovation Research Center, or AIRC, we are working to establish methods to quantitatively evaluate the risk of a portfolio of the Navy's science and technology research efforts. I'll now pass it over to Nick for our problem statement.
Thanks, Clay. So the problem statement that our team has developed and come up with is how can we establish methods to quantitatively evaluate portfolios within the Navy's science and technology acquisition research efforts. Now I'll pass it back over to Clay to talk a little more about our methodology.
Thanks, Nick. So for our methods, we had two main ones. The first being literature review of numerous Navy science and technology and portfolio approach articles. This was extremely helpful in bettering our understanding of both the field of our project and potential recommendations that we may want to use. Next, we conducted 15 to 20 interviews with professionals working with or for DARPA, Raytheon, NAVAIR, the Pentagon, the Office of Naval Research, the Center for Naval Analyses, and individuals in the finance field. Our team was immensely grateful for this opportunity and the ability to personalize questions in a way that gained insight to each individual's area of expertise, which all went on to building a better foundation of knowledge of both the field itself and assessing risk as a whole. And I'll pass it back over to Nick for our proposed solution.
Thanks, Clay. So the proposed solution that our team's developed and come up with is how can we are using a stage gate approach within the DoD's acquisition process. First, we look at the core components, which it breaks the project lifecycle down into distinct stages, including preliminary research, development, and testing. There's critical decisions at each of the gates for a project's either continuation or its termination. The benefits of using this approach is that it is able to take both the failures and successes and continue moving them down in the pipeline of the stage gate framework, helping us lead to a final working solution. The stage gate approach, like I said, is an iterative risk assessment framework, which means it can still take this data from these failed projects and recycle them back into the new and ongoing portfolios. That way we're not losing as much time and resources, and we're able to still continue leading forward to our final working solution. Lastly, its ability to enhance the portfolio's resilience. Again, by being able to take both the successes and failures and recycle them back into the portfolio as a whole, we're able to save valuable time and resources in the project. And this allows for project managers to make much more effective decisions in the long-term working solution of a project. So for our economic analysis, our results will be presented through Hellmeyer's catechisms, which are a series of questions formulated to evaluate potential risk in a project and develop risk mitigation strategies. These results encompass various aspects of stakeholder or project management, including scope, schedule, timeline, and stakeholder engagement. By being able to systematically address each of these catechisms, project managers within the Navy are able to gain insight and potential pitfalls and develop proactive solutions on how to counter these issues. Next, looking at net cash flow. Currently, the DoD typically takes on a low amount of risk to ensure that their cash flow remains positive, as they don't want to go seek additional congressional approval or have excessive financial issues, both of which can greatly increase the original intended scope and timeline of a project. Lastly, we look at payback period. With our proposed solution, it's important to know that an extension of the original payback period is not necessarily indicative of a failure of a project. We do expect to see some loss in the short term due to implementation of some of the more innovative and riskier projects. But when we're combining these projects with our new and ongoing ones, in the long term, we do expect to experience a positive financial benefit and overall benefit of return in the portfolio as a whole. Now I'll pass it off to Clay to talk about some more key takeaways.
Thanks, Nick. So our team reached a conclusion based on a quantitative analysis from the data obtained through our conducted interviews with our subject matter experts. Next, we found that by promoting a portfolio approach to the stage gate risk assessment framework in the Department of Defense acquisition process, it will both reduce costs and reuse information. Lastly, this ultimately allows the Department of Defense to both develop and analyze multiple projects simultaneously and turns failures into valuable learning experiences, which all helps to deliver the most optimal outcome. And I'll pass it over to Declan to talk about our recommendation.
Thanks, Clay. The recommendation that the team had for the Acquisition Innovation Research Center was the adoption of a stage gate risk assessment framework used in tandem with portfolio theory. The stage gate framework that we have developed, the model as you can see here, is funnel shaped and goes through a series of periodic stage gate reviews to shrink down the number of projects that are still in the development portfolio. At each of these stages, a kill, hold, or go decision is to be made. If a kill decision is to be made, funding will be ceased, and all information that has been gathered up to this point should be stored in a reused information knowledge bank, able to be accessed at a later date. If a hold decision is to be made, the same thing should occur, but the ability. That's not good.
Keep on talking.
If a hold decision is to be made.
I know there's scripturally.
Yeah, the current progress of development should be halted until the resources needed or the pertinent need for that information occurs. If a go decision is to be made, the project should move forward along the development pipeline and continue to work towards becoming a final working product. Additionally, you can see that our portfolio has several different parts. The portfolio was intended to be flexible and the metrics were intended to be modifiable according to the specific needs of each individual project manager and each individual project. We have 4 categories here of differing degrees of technological innovation required for each project. We go from least risky to most risky, with continuous being the least risky, risk in this sense being the lack of likelihood of success of the project. So for example, a continuous solution would require a lot of technology, strategies, and approaches that have already been tried and true, proven very well. Whereas something that is revolutionary would represent what be like the ideal technological solution, looking at technology that is yet to be explored. It is critical to explore all of these in tandem so you can explore new technology while still guaranteeing that you have a final working solution and that there's still some sort of project there at the end of the day. Moving forward into our experience, the capstone team was very grateful for all of our experiences throughout this project. We've learned a lot since 9 months ago when we first started working together and conducting the literature review. Conducted lots of interviews, as Clay mentioned, learning from a lot of really phenomenal people in a very diverse field, from academia to the private industry to various sectors within the government. And we're very grateful to everybody's network that we were able to leverage in order to do so. We certainly had to overcome some adversity to get to our final working recommendation, but we're very grateful to have had that opportunity. We'd like to extend our gratitude to everybody that's helped us get here. Thank you. Are there any questions?
What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome throughout this project?
So something that's rather unique about our project compared to the majority of the other ones that we're going to hear about today is that it's there's a lot less tangible data. We weren't necessarily given a large data set like other people due to the nature of Department of Defense acquisitions and general security clearance and NDA requirements. So everything that we developed up to this point was intended to be very flexible and able to be applied to a variety of different situations in order to combat that. But so some of that adversity being the fact that we had to be somewhat hypothetical, I guess would be good. Yes.
So I noticed that economic analysis was not a huge portion of this. I know you mentioned payback period. It's probably not atypical with many federal government clients. Did you find, in fact, that they were looking more for outcome-based decision-making rather than an economic analysis?
Yeah, especially because in most of the projects we're looking at, some of which are restricted, we couldn't actually see some of the budgetary information. But also just the scope of some of these projects, the amount of money they're spending in the billions is really difficult to quantify in a sense. But most of what we gathered from our interviews with some of these subject matter experts, they're mainly more focused on the outcomes of the project itself, not necessarily the actual financial implications that they were spending.
Very common Fed versus corporate.
So if this stage gate approach is implemented in the government, do you foresee a problem with there being a similarity between kill and hold, where the projects get put on hold indefinitely versus getting like just killed?
I think there's that problem is somewhat inherent to doing anything with the government. Yes, things could certainly be on hold for a very long period of time. The hope, I think, is that with something put on hold, it's somewhat easier to come back to than something that's killed, with all the information from a killed project being stored into a knowledge bank that can be returned to later. Wouldn't necessarily be inconceivable to resume one of those projects, but ideally it kind of cuts down on the financial burden of whoever's funding it to be able to do that. Any more questions?